Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 58th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic with co-host Bryant W. Today's topic is a spiritual solution. Can you share what this means to you and why you picked this for today, BW?
Good morning, my friend. Yes, I can. I think in some of our previous discussions, we had a lot of depth into some of the concepts, and a lot of those concepts, the reason we're able to talk about them is because we then experience them, and it becomes an experiential process where, you know, you start having, like you've mentioned many times, you start believing in the program, or you start believing in sobriety or being clean and living in a new way. And I think there's like this sort of like fundamental difference when it comes to like who am I in this life, and what can I get in this life, and how am I going to get what I need in this life. And all these concepts kind of show us where we've been healthy and unhealthy in those thought processes. And I would consider underneath all of that is spirituality. And I do believe that it's the primary. I think that it's the foundation, the invisible foundation that we tend to have a veil about, but it's actually what keeps everything together. And so what I mean by that is, I don't think we even would have access to these concepts and these experiences without the spirituality. But I think it requires being taught these things because we have a lack of knowledge, and then actually experiencing them. And then it opens our mind to actually leaning into this new experience, which is weaving in I always talk about getting things in the right sequence. And so I think when that is your primary foundation, and you can call it whatever you want, but we call it spirituality. When you tap into a power greater than yourself, when you stop being this little me, this insecure me, this isolated, vulnerable, fragile me, and you start turning that will over to something bigger than yourself, whether that's simply just taking advice from somebody else or actually having what we call spiritual experiences, that's when I think you actually begin to have access to what I think we've always been trying to experience our whole life through all these different ways of trying to find wholeness, whether that was looking for yourself outside of yourself, thinking that these material items would bring you happiness and contentment, comparing yourself to other people. These things all seem to get like back down to their right size with what I call spirituality and the spiritual experience, or the spiritual solution. And that's why I picked this topic today.
I love that. That's so wonderfully put, brother.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I think that there was a lot of part of my life where I believed I was like spiritual and enlightened and kind of had a clue. And, you know, and it was really through the step work, and quite honestly, most of that revelation occurred from my step 4 and 5 and 6 about how deluded I was inside what I thought were loving, compassionate motives, and you know what real motives were hiding behind there, and really just how intolerant and unaccepting I was being, and how I was twisting my principled action as excuses to go and use, you know. Like, man, could I ever use at you? Could I ever use with you? Could I ever use for you? You know, and all those things really were wrapped up in an airtight delusion that I bought into wholeheartedly.
Wow.
Without the tools of these steps, I
Mm.
had no clue. And I'm not going to go too far into this because I feel like I'll blow all my questions. but but you know, I went into options and I remember um it was Shirley. It was
Yeah.
Shirley, and one of the first days, she's like, it's about having a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. And I was just like, oh, I'm fucked. Like, no, there's no chance. Right now, I was feeling as not anti, but non. I'll say non
Okay.
versus anti. I wasn't against the spiritual experience, but I was non-spiritual. I was not having my spiritual moments in my 13 days of detoxing and coming in and having my family hate me and me self-loathing. And I was not feeling connected to a universal energy of any sort other than, other than my songwriting, which was happened to be what I latched onto and allowed
Well, that's
for me to
amazing.
move forward. But so, okay, I think I'm going to leave my response there and I'm going to let you start the questions today because I thought, why don't we just shake this shit up?
Yeah. So very quick reflection here of what you just said. You said two very important things, and I think if you really, really think about it, it's like very important to the point where I'm smiling because it's actually insane. You said you previously thought that you might be spiritual and enlightened in some capacity.
Yeah,
And then you admitted that you were not even close.
yeah. I,
And I'm not saying that to be in a personal way because I can relate. The thing is, though, think about you've got billions of people running around that are possibly looking through that lens.
yeah.
Billions.
Mm,
And somehow, even though we look at our world and we constantly see what's missing and this is terrible and I can't believe they did that and like this is going to happen and we're all going to this and like the earth is dying. But the simple fact is like that the fact that we even have it functioning the way it is based on that mentality is a miracle, which gives me even more respect for like what's underlying everything because everybody's constantly being fine-tuned by the spirit, man. Like we can't see it, but I really believe that. So I just wanted to point out and have a little laugh about how amazing it is to have thought this and be aware that that was not true.
Without the steps, wasn't capable of the honesty or the humility to see accurately through
I
those
completely understand.
delusions.
I completely agree and
Mm,
relate to that. So let's shake it up.
yeah, yeah. Here we go. Shake that shit, B Dubs.
All right, Milan, my question to you is how do you weave spirituality into taking action, whether it's in fear or in faith?
Okay.
Or that's not really well said. So more like how do you weave your spirituality into your action, like taking action, especially when there's fear, I should say.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, um, it when you have step three, right?
Mm,
And step three is talking about turning our will over to our higher power and
yeah.
not living in self-will. For anybody who's new, that concept was impossible immediately for me to understand. Like
Okay.
I just was like, huh? Like I'm gonna be a robot, you know? And one of my good friends who you've worked with, young Gabriel,
Yeah.
young Gabriel said, I've got a lot of young Gabriel said things. And I really believe that, there's times where young Gabriel pulls some great wisdom out.
I
He's
agree.
he's good at sharing what he's figured out. And I
Yeah.
think that's what makes him a great support worker and, future counselor inside addiction is that he's really lived the turmoil and
Yeah.
pulled himself to a much better place.
No question.
And it has absolutely been the program that saved his life. And he'll credit that any day of the week.
It's true.
Um, so when I was just perplexed and kind of confused, and almost like scared I wasn't going to be able to move forward in that, young Gabriel said, it pulled out, they give us a list of spiritual principles at
Yeah.
options. And he said, he said, when you are at any point, is your action following these principles, the
Right.
honesty, integrity, open-mindedness, willingness. And then anybody out there can just Google a list of spiritual principles and you can see, you could get this tattooed on your hand if you want a little guidebook in life. But
Sure.
are your actions in line with that? And if it's not, then you know, then you know that you're not living spiritually and that there's a disconnection happening in your life. So, you know, um, to get back about what you were saying about fear, like right now, I am still motivated to be strong in my program from my fear of dying again. You
No
know,
doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
like that just is to me honestly healthy fear. I've been
I
cut
can
twice
agree.
by a chainsaw and I know I'm a cucumber and I have a healthy fear of being cut again by a chainsaw. You know,
Yeah.
there's fears that I'm like, yeah, like you don't put your hand in a wolf's mouth with no glove on. Like, like there's just things that I don't jump in front of a car doing 100 thinking, I wonder how I bounce, like
Good.
and so I know though that my fear is motivating me to stay in my program. And, one thing I firmly believe in is staying in the middle of the road. And the middle of the
No
road
doubt.
means I'm not close to falling off an edge. And how I do that is by repeated days. Like I'm living a groundhog day of my program where
Yeah.
I get up, I do my gratitudes, I do my readings, I do my physical exercise. I'm now praying during that. I'm walking my dogs. Here we are doing a podcast, which I
Yeah.
do consider this podcast part of my program now. Like, I mean, we're literally here having a two-person meeting talking about recovery, trying to sort out this confusing process of existence.
Well
You know,
said, man.
and and so, like everywhere it says, like a meeting is, two or more addicts sharing. Guess what?
No
One
doubt.
plus one equals B dubs. And but so, you know, um, my fear is now matched with an amount of faith where I
Yes.
know that if I keep acting in alignment. And I am want to make it very clear. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, saying
No.
I'm acting perfectly all the time, saying I'm 100% honest, saying I'm 100% compassionate, saying I'm 100% tolerant. I'm just saying that I'm trying and struggling with my own failures inside those principles to maintain a program that I'm trying to evolve and become better with. Like
Of
I'm
course.
putting myself constantly in uncomfortable situations that force me to try to grow.
Makes sense.
And
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
and one of the beauties of having the gift of doing this podcast is that I get to have these conversations constantly that
Yeah.
open my mind and push me towards learning more.
Very
Like
cool.
everybody, including yourself, who comes on and shares their experience and perspective with me is giving me a larger library of experiences without me having to live those experiences.
Good point.
Like I don't have to
That's the beauty.
invent the
Yeah.
wheel to like driving a car. I just have to like get in and enjoy the circular motion of that
No
wheel.
doubt.
And so, like the insane divination that occurred for these 12 steps to have been created has just been something that instead of overly questioning, I'm having acceptance for because it is proving itself to be strong in my life. And now on a day-to-day basis, I have faith that I'm going to be straight.
Yeah.
Like my fear is there that I could go back to that, but that fear is really diminished these days in
I'm
that
very grateful to hear that. Yeah.
like it's more I know now that if I keep doing the same stuff, I'm going to be straight tomorrow. And they say that it's a just for today program. And but I know that waking up today, I know that waking up today, if I live my life like I did yesterday, that there's a pretty freaking strong chance I'm going to bed straight tonight.
No
How
doubt.
do I know that? Because if I keep myself inside my program, that maintains my emotional sobriety. And that emotional sobriety is really the unification of my spirituality and my actions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's exactly why they call it a spiritual solution, because it requires that to live in that space, to get you to the faith, to get you through the day, to keep you on the right side of things. Because if you do the other things, you'll be so uncomfortable that you'll eventually maybe say, I'm going back to the way I used to do things because I just can't take it. So I think that's a beautiful little package of why they call it a spiritual solution.
Well, and I would like to say that, um, last night was how it works was the topic at the Monday Night Beginners group. And, my first sentence in my share was, it's not how it lazies or how it pretends or how it dreams. Like your
Mm,
recovery does not come from fanciful thoughts. It
it really
comes
doesn't.
from working these steps, living these steps, rinse, repeat, working these steps, living these steps. And if you are not willing to put any effort in, odds are that, it's not going to work for you.
No
So,
question.
like not doing the program of action, which is the 12 steps,
Yeah.
don't expect great results. Like sitting for an hour on a meeting or going to a meeting and doing no other work would not keep me straight.
I have said from the moment it became clear to me till today that if I didn't do those few things, which was ask someone that had done that for help, sponsor, I say step four saved my life. But yeah, I know without any doubt that if I hadn't done the steps, that there's no chance, and I say it with a little bit of drama, like there's no chance that I would have ever maintained. No.
I wouldn't have found any joy inside sobriety, I was listening to this book on the way home. I don't know if you've listened to it. I think I recommended it to you before, but The Untethered Soul.
I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about unconditional joy and making that decision to have unconditional joy. And it was kind of the first time I was introduced to that topic while I was driving home last night. And man, my mind is just spinning from how much he talked about right after that in that book. That book is a really fascinating book. Anybody out there who wants to have their mind blown a little bit on some directions, check out The Untethered Soul. It was recommended to me by a friend a couple months ago, and I've recommended it ceaselessly because I just feel that it sure ties in with evolution. It ties in with the program really well,
Yeah.
and I feel that it has a couple tips that we just don't get inside the program.
No question. Well, that's why they say more will be revealed, or we only know a little. There's a lot of people that have taken it to the next step with this the spiritual solution, um, and they do things outside of the program that dig deeper into that because that's step 11. So you could step 11, but the problem is, like you mentioned before, you had this idea and concept of yourself and spirituality. You probably just did step 11 for a while, but you forgot to do the other 10 before it, right? Because
There's a reason, there's an order.
no question. Because like for me, I knew something was wrong and that I wasn't okay and that like I needed help. And I read a bunch of spiritual books. I went to church with my mom. I did the stuff they say more about alcoholism for me. Like I went and I talked to all sorts of people. I went to the doctor. I tried different things. And like a real estate agent that was in debt 300 grand saved my life.
um,
That's amazing.
yeah.
I like that.
Is it my turn to ask a question, or did you
No,
still have more of them?
I didn't really answer my first one,
Okay.
but I
Yeah.
went on. yamming. I'll just do it quickly. So,
No, no, you don't have to. You can do it slowly, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It will all manifest.
so that's exactly what happened to me too. You said it similarly. Like I knew I was duped. I knew I was out of dance moves. I knew that I had seen other people have some reprieve based on going to these resources. So I was very lucky. Like I met my mentor really soon, and then I did what he told me to do. And um, exactly like you said, I constantly put myself in uncomfortable situations that I would have always ignored. Like if I, the gift of desperation, they call it, willing to do anything, willing to go to any length. Like these are real things, man. You got to have the right ingredients. You have to be in a point of humility. You don't even know what humility means yet, but you are in a state of humility. And you mentioned it before too, the healthy fear of going back. Like it's still self-preservation, but it's built in a different form of self-preservation. It's a willingness to admit that I have a problem, whereas before it was like self-preservation, always trying to get the outside to meet the inside or whatever that looked like. So I would do what I was told to do that was totally in contrast to anything I had ever done before. Whether that was shaking a bunch of people's hands, sweeping up things that I didn't want to sweep up, going to locations I would never go to, going to something on a Saturday that I would never go to, helping somebody else, whatever these things are, it really shows just by the way I said that how like not entitled but lacking in community I was. It was always about like what could I do to enjoy my life, you know what I mean? And when I was down and out, it's like who can I talk to about how terribly things are going instead of just taking positive action and doing something outside of yourself, you know? So that's what, like I said, facing my fears was the critical point in that first chunk, and it still is. It's really hard though, as like a someone that you mentioned, that wonderful lady. I think she was in her 40th or something year. It could have even been more. And
49th.
yeah, so just saying like I'm worried that I might not be a good example because I'm still admitting that I struggle and like this and that. I think like that's a if you can handle that fact, then you're going to do a lot better because it really does get uncomfortable no matter how much you put into this because we have invested ourselves in things that still have the capacity to really hurt us, you know what I mean, at times. And we have the capacity to invest ourselves in things where we don't get the result we want. So those two things alone can really throw someone off, especially if they think they're doing everything on a spiritual path. And so facing fears, doing things I didn't want to do, and then honesty, like those three things were what created the faith that got me the experiences I needed in order to proceed. And I think that's how I wove the spirituality into my fear. And then spirituality became experiential spirituality. And that's what's been guiding me ever since. And I'll tell you right now, sometimes it feels like I'm walking hand in hand, and sometimes it feels like I've been let go to walk long stretches where I'm like, where is it? You know, like I'm not feeling that warmth. I'm not feeling that love within my soul, and I am fearful because like I'm feeling uncomfortable because my go-to mechanism since I was a young child is that I'm something's wrong with me or I'm not doing it right. Two things that have like guided me through my life. If I feel the way I'm feeling and I'm looking around and having an experience that says, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't what I've tried to accomplish. And the two main things is something's wrong with me or I'm not doing it right. And then when I don't know what that is, I go into fear and anxiety and I flounder and I sometimes, yeah, I lose my compass. And so for me, when my compass is not working, I deeply need the spiritual solution. And I think that's a fairly decent way to wrap up that question. Like it's critical. You mentioned the step three. It's critical to me when I believe my compass isn't working.
Love that. That was well put, my brother. Okay. Um, Before you came to the rooms, did you have failed attempts at controlling your addictions? And what was the difference using a spiritual solution for you?
That's that's a beautiful question. I had many. I was a young man when I asked for help. I have no
For
idea
those
why.
out there who are new, how old were you?
20 years old.
Okay.
Um, yeah, for some reason I just got emotional.
It's okay. We can cry on this show.
Well, yeah, and it's like I don't know. I think that it's just a moment of compassion for yourself, looking back at like I hadn't lived a life of crime and indecency by the time I was 19. You know, I literally was just like fairly well-rounded person trying to fit in and do the things that our parents and teachers and everyone else around us suggest. But right around my late teens, we had some tragedy in my family, and I had low self-esteem and insecurity, and like those three things fed the beast that was maybe rushing through my DNA, as well as just waiting for that right life circumstances to present to me this suggestion that I wasn't good enough and that life was suffering, you know. And I went to university when I was 17 and got an apartment in Halifax, and I wasn't ready to have that kind of independence, and I had no idea what was rushing through my mind and my veins, and how like dangerous it was, you know. Because I got out there, and I'm living in Halifax, and I'm at university, and I'm apparently doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. You know, up until that point, I had got to that landmark thing that everybody told me I needed to do, and I found myself running around looking for myself in all the wrong places, or at least trying to fit in all the wrong places. And I started feeling really, really sad inside. And I had a few experiences. My father almost passed away that first year of university, and I just started realizing like I'm not even doing what I'm here to be doing. I started questioning a lot of things and like some tragedies leading up to that time prior to me going there. And I kind of just fell apart at a very early age. I was drinking daily, like I was drinking daily, and I was doing other things, and I was, you know, trying to fit in and doing the whole thing. And I found myself what I guess you would call depressed at like a very early age. And I asked for help when I was literally 20 years old. I spent a month in a place, and it was right around Christmas time, and I remember sitting on the edge of my bed wondering, how did I get here? Like, what happened? Like, I was ski racing, I was on school teams, I was like in this little group of people and a school, and I had cousins and all these different experiences. And all of a sudden, I just felt so alone in the world. Like, no one I know is going through this right now. All my friends are at school and seem to be doing okay. And of course, that's like a very self centered thing to think like that. But at the time, I was like, I'm basically in a hospital trying to get help for something that I have no control over. So at 20, I was like at the mercy of alcoholism. And people my age were like, what? Like, you're okay. Like, you're always having a good time. And my family was like, seems a little dramatic. Like, you're 20 years old, you know, but like, we'll try to help you. And I still had this spirit of like tenacity, and sort of my ego was still so intact that I was still not able to hear what was being told to me. So half of the equation was there, which was that I was realizing that I had a problem, but the other half was that I wasn't willing to listen to what the solution
You
was.
weren't powerless yet about it.
Correct. Like, I had this one doctor say to me, he's like, "You have advanced alcoholism," and I was like, "What?" And and you know, that whole thing did not even end very well, because like before I left, I was already cutting corners, you know. And I had about 3 months of reprieve, and then I ended up, I'll get to the point here, but that was my first attempt at getting help. And then from 20 till 29, which was the day August 2nd of 2015 till today, was sobriety. From that day till that day, at least 10 times, if not more, I managed to do 3 weeks to a month to maybe like 6 weeks. I don't know, usually 1 week, sometimes 3 days. Once that like demon left after like days of hangover and like self-loathing and like cold sweats and pulling your face off a pillow to get to work when you feel like your heart's going to explode, like once my physical being would kind of, I would be like, I think I'm going to do it again. And just again, 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 again. Like I got arrested like 3 times. I'll never do this again, 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 again. I went to the doctor. I'm like, I don't feel good. Like my stomach's all messed up. I was getting like gastroscopy, putting me to sleep. And it was all just like inflammation and poison from alcoholism again, again. And so I'm like, I'm doing all this madness trying to find out what's wrong with me. And the only thing I hadn't done is like found a solution to my alcoholism. And so I tried all kinds of stuff. I would cry on the phone with my mother. I would, like all kinds of shit. I went way up north to plant trees. Like whatever. I did all kinds of stuff to try to feel better, relationships. And, as I mentioned before, I read a lot of books. I went to church. I did that stuff, and like, I was like, oh, this will be it. This is it. And I make fun of myself often because like I really did think because we live in a world where we're constantly being told like, oh, this person met this person, or like this door opened up for this person, or like, and like it's like people get all these like great breaks and networking, and next thing you know, they're like working their dream job and they got this, and that was not happening for me, bro. Like I was literally working for people that put up with me because I worked really hard when I was working for them, but I was like a bag of shit. Like I was hungover every day. I would often come to work like almost still drunk. Like I didn't necessarily drink when I woke up, but I was like, you took a breathalyzer. Like I still had a blood alcohol level, probably that was more than the average person when they get drunk.
Yeah.
And I walked around like that for like 10 years. So yes, I tried so many things until I finally, and I should emphasize, I ended up going to the program, a 12-step program to get well, and it worked for me. Prior to that, nothing had ever worked for me. And I would only have these tiny little gaps. Um, One more quick story, like right before I finally wrapped it up, I was doing these deep water dives for my commercial diving certification. And it was way up north in Ontario, and we were going to be doing like 185-foot dives. We had to like work hyperbaric chambers, and like people's lives were on the line. My life was on the line. And I had this older friend in my program, and I was like, dude, it is critical that you don't let me drink while we're up here. Like, you cannot let me drink. Like, no matter what happens, like, no matter what you guys all go do, I cannot drink. And he was like, okay. And I think he like believed that I was being serious. And I managed to not drink in that last little chunk of time when I was getting trained up for my work. And I genuinely thought I was going to die. Like I was like, I'm gonna die if I like put myself in danger like this. Like or I could somebody else. Like that's how serious this thing is. And so I had to like beg friends to not let me, like all this stuff. So they say unmanageable. Like that's pretty unmanageable, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
I was loving that actually the whole way
Yeah.
along. I did not feel like you were taking too long. That was all inside your head, but I was loving it. So for myself, you know, my sponsor likens it to there's 5 stages in your addiction. There's the all good with hiccups. There's the hiccups with a little bit of good. There's the all hiccups, and then there's the desperation. And for myself, the first 20 years of my addiction, I would say I thought was the all good. I wouldn't even acknowledge a hiccup, you know. And although the last 17 years was mostly hiccups with, little bits of good, I still wasn't acknowledging it as that. I was still thinking this is all good with a couple hiccups. But when those
Okay.
hiccups would happen, they were fucking massive, tragic hiccups that were
Oh my
life
God.
wrecking, that were life wrecking. But I was still like a little bump in the road. We can get through this. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to control it myself. When they have that Gosh, I'm not even sure what chapter it is in the big book, but the one where they're like, I tried drinking like a gentleman, drinking only on the weekend, drinking
Yeah,
only.
that's more about alcoholism.
Yeah, more about alcoholism. And that was me. Like when we have to read that at the meeting, I'm just
Yeah.
like, stop talking about me in public. Like I'm so embarrassed.
It is quite embarrassing.
But it like they hit so many of my attempted things.
It's
And
amazing.
the biggest thing for me was that first of all, I never admitted I was an alcoholic or an addict. And I
Oh,
just didn't have the correct definition of it.
that makes sense.
Like because because I could stop for short periods of white knuckling, because I still had a home, because I wasn't
Right.
pushing a cart, because I wasn't, excuse me, collecting empties on the side of the road.
Right.
There was a lot of things that I just didn't understand about the addiction and the alcoholism that kept me from having that admission, and also too because I was able to stop for a few days, because I didn't need
Right.
to get up and have a drink from the shakes.
Right.
I
Right.
wasn't. And so that really prolonged my pain by 17 years. And uh, every time that I was straight, what occurred was just me resenting whoever I was being straight for. Like, like I would
Yeah.
I would I would project the fucking shittiest resentment on my wife,
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
whoever, like just like it would be like if there was like a party going on that I wanted to be partying at, I would be just like a little shithead 2-year old. I know, like there was times where I was just like starting fights because I was angry about not having the control over myself.
No
And
question. Yeah.
and so when at the end of like before I came into the room, did I failed attempts at controlling my addiction? Obviously, because there was 17 years where it never took,
No doubt.
but
Yeah.
the what was different in using a spiritual solution for me, the difference was is that I call the surrender like the Jedi mind trick of all of the 12-step program, in that so much of my brain was the hamster on the wheel of like get more, use more while
No
using it.
question.
Like
Yeah.
make sure there's more, have more for the morning, everything set up for tomorrow. We got to keep this ball rolling. That was like 30 to 70% of my brain power trapped in
It's
that wheel.
incredible that we
Uh,
don't
and
have that.
and
Yeah.
and when I surrendered and that went away, I was like instantly, I was like, I can just stop that fight. Like
Yes.
that in itself was such a powerful transformation. I was just like, okay, well, give me more of this program. And and like and through doing the steps, I've successfully been able to quell that shame and guilt,
Right.
bring down my anxiety, help me with my other defects, rebuild relationships, so that now being straight is bringing me infinitely more joy and serenity than I even understood was a positive thing.
No
I was
question.
never
Yeah.
looking for serenity, man. I was looking for the extreme chaos and more that, that I was taught through consumerism is the right and the best way to do it. Like we are taught not to be satisfied by our televisions and radios, you know?
Absolutely.
And
Well,
so,
yeah.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you got something.
Well, I think that's the fundamental flaw in the identity is it's that's why they say it's a spiritual solution. It no human power. And so I equate that to anything outside.
And, like, well, when they say that, it has to be a power greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Why? Because we thought we were fucking everything and we failed
Yes,
over and over and over. If
that's
it's
the
not
cool.
greater than us, then in our brain, mathematically, we're setting ourselves up for another failure. It has to be greater than us because we thought we were everything and we failed.
Correct.
And I think I'll leave that one there. You got another
Nice.
question, B Dubs?
Um. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 That was your question. Uh-huh. So
I love you. You get so caught up in the loving it. I just like me, where it's like, where are we?
You know what's kind of neat though, my friend, is like I actually love this. Like I don't when I was working where I met you,
Yeah.
it's the only job I've ever had where every single time I was happy to go.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, I guess I do know why, but anyhow,
You can say the O word. Options is a magical place, and they deserve all the credit we can get. Anybody looking for a great treatment center, contact Options in the Okanagan at Kelowna.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, like I really, really love and probably will. Like I have my life coaching as well, and like I just really, really love this stuff. Like it, because I mean, it's a very common thing for addicts and alcoholics and people that suffer from these things to like find themselves wanting to like be part of that solution, whether occupationally or voluntarily. But and I guess I'm one of those people. But I mean, I like really like it like a lot.
Me too. This, honestly, doing these is just such a satisfying part of my life right now.
It's awesome, dude. I have to tell you, I
Yeah.
didn't realize how much I'd like this, and it may inspire me to find a different way to express this, like the way you are. I think it's rad,
Yeah.
super
Well, I
rad,
mean,
man.
I feel like we're kind of on this journey together right now, and I'm loving it, you know?
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I am grateful. Like I woke up today, I'm tired.
Sure,
Like I'm always tired after the Monday nights because I got to drive back down to Oliver from
no
Kelowna.
doubt. Yeah,
And I woke up and I'm still like, oh, can't wait to get on there with Brian.
it's gonna be rad.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Me and the B
Yeah,
dubs
yeah,
riding
that's
on
beautiful, my friend.
spirituality.
Spirituality, man. I have a profound respect for it. So here's the question: does your faith dwindle when you don't get the results you want?
Well, okay. My faith, my faith in myself wavers
Same.
when my defects that I feel, like I expect to be a little bit coped with or dealt with or evolved from in some respects. Um, you know, it's really funny that, that's a really great question because, I said to my sponsor a couple months ago, I said, I have all this evidence that like
Yeah.
should be giving me the greatest faith at any point
Yeah.
in my life. Like I'm alive. I'm straight without cravings. You know,
Amazing.
I'm like with my family, I'm rebuilding my life.
It's
And then
pretty
there's
amazing.
times where I'm afraid to say the G word, man.
Fair
You
enough.
know? So it's like a mixed bag of like, so I don't necessarily think it dwindles when I'm not getting the results I want.
Yeah,
It's like a fear of commitment to that faith,
I agree.
you know? And
Yeah,
and why? Because of my own personal stigmatization from my childhood experiences.
that
Um,
makes a lot of sense.
like if somebody had called it like, a quazul greater than yourself instead of like, a higher power. And if you didn't use the word God and you just created a whole new tangent for these 12 steps, then what the dogma that is used, I would
Yeah,
have a way easier time embracing it.
you never know, right? And I can relate to that. I think hopefully, maybe in time, it can evolve and not be such a, you know, you often hear people being like, "Don't get caught up on the word
Then
God,"
don't
and
use the word. Then don't use the word. Simple. Like if you want the converse to that, if you want like equality in that statement itself, then
yeah,
don't use the word.
fair.
Like
But
literally, it doesn't take that much more ink to use the word higher power everywhere. It doesn't. Telling, oh, just for simplicity's sake, we're going to use what we want. like, and that,
yeah,
and that is a barrier for a lot of people who haven't had great experiences. Like, you know?
That's sort of what I was going to say. Yeah, and I agree, and it's a very important part. So similar to like being too scared to tell people your secrets, being too scared to accept something that's constantly let you down. Like human failure is what flaws the word God. It's not the word itself or what that word represents. It's people that have represented this thing. Human frailty is what's contaminated that word, in my opinion.
Well, you know, like we're looking for this all loving, supportive higher power.
Yeah.
Hell, original sin, all these things, like, dude, they don't add up to that. Like
Well,
I
yeah,
used
not
to
to mention
argue
they're
with the
basically
priest that my mom was God. Because that, you know, I said to the priest, I said, well, you say God's the all loving being, and then we have original sin. I said, my mom could forgive everyone for original sin. So my mom's more loving than God, so she's God. And then the priest was like, what?
well, to be honest, that was a very important detail for me too, because we were told that we were also told how real and how serious hell was, and I had a chat with one of my younger siblings about that because she genuinely thought that like she might end up there, and I was like, if I would never send you there, I don't think God would. So like, like if I can say for sure I don't think you belong there, then like hopefully whatever created the universe has a little bit of tolerance for you too. So I know, and that's serious though. And so it is important to not get hung up on that because I actually do believe in it and I do think it is all loving.
Mm. And like, you know, like I sat in a classroom with the 10 commandments on the wall, and I'm like, I'm going to hell. I like did
No doubt.
everything. I did everything but kill someone. And I was in grade school. I was like, I'm coveting wives, and I'm like, everything. And and
I
and
mean,
that was
what?
like, it was. It, I'm like, I had broken all the commandments, and like
No
except for
doubt, man.
killing, and it was just like, well, then I'm going to hell, like because the act of contrition in Catholicism only works if you're actually contrite.
Yes,
And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm contrite. I really felt like, self-centered enough at that point um that it was lying. Like it was my contrition was a lie. So therefore I'm breaking another commandment in my prayer.
I understand that. And that's how interesting this whole thing is. You could almost relate that back to like all the attempts to get clean or sober. Like there's
Yeah.
this thing you want to do or need to do, but you just keep slipping up. And that's the same thing with like the being this like, they gave us an incredibly challenging example to live up to. Christ, like I, I can't drive to the store without judging somebody.
Yeah.
I'm
You know,
I'm
I
gonna I'm just grabbing my mug.
okay, go for it. I was at a meeting down in Mexico, and one of the greatest shares I heard was this lady. She said, how long does it take to judge a room of people? She's like, exactly 1 hour. She's like, I can judge everybody in this room superficially without knowing any of you in 1 hour. And she said, that's part of my addiction and my problem. And I thought it was really well put. I'm like, thought about the times I've looked around rooms and made superficial judgments on people just from my eyeballs.
Absolutely. Hold on 2 secs. Apparently my phone is not plugged in, and I need to get this right.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So for myself, I like that you said the faith in yourself because I think that actually immediately reflected back to me what's going on in that type of experience, which is what inspired the question. I think at this point in time, I am convinced, if not feel like I know that this higher power, or, I like to call things like the intelligence in all things, like the intelligence in nature, the intelligence in the laws of the universe, the intelligence in the laws of consciousness. I don't want to get too carried away, but like there's obviously intelligence in everything that exists. And so I have faith in that. When I see like little butterflies landing on little yellow flowers and I see rivers going in and like beautiful clouds and sunsets, and I see babies being born, and I see people forgiving from the depths of their soul or people recovering from addiction. I have faith. And I really do believe that once you see clearly that all of our problems, they say, are of self creation. And it's always stemming from an insecure, vulnerable, limited perspective on what it means to be a human being or what this experience is. And you said it right at the beginning. You said, like, what this life is all about, like the meaning of this life. And we're so easily influenced. Like, when I was young, I didn't have an older brother, but most of my friends did. And like, they were like gods, like even like a guy or even my sister like 2 3 years older, like they were the gods. Like we were like, I gotta be like these dudes when I grow up. Like I want to listen to the same music as you skateboard, I'm getting a skateboard. Like you put a little braid in your hair, I'm gonna put a braid in my hair. Like I can't wait to buy those shoes, like we're like chronically being influenced. And so by the time your inner structures had enough defeated moments and then you're sitting there like feeling anxious, alone, paranoid, and you're using drugs and alcohol to feel a sense of calm, like you have been mangled by what I would call like the outside influence. And so to be guided back to a place of rest within oneself without the aid of some uh, uh, substance, it's really challenging. So for me, it's me that wavers. It's not the faith in the higher power. I really believe in it. I believe it's constant, and I believe it's constantly working in its laws. And I think those laws are true. And it doesn't matter what I do. That's why they say over and over and over again. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it's the thing that everybody knows now. We all know that we're supposed to live in the now, and we all know that we're, capable of manifesting things. But like, let's get it in the right order. Like, I think a lot of us are full of shit, and I haven't said anything like that yet.
Ah.
It's actually a real thing. To meditate is practice. It's discipline. So for me to have faith and not have it dwindle when things don't go the way I want them to, that requires me not going back to my 10-year-old self that has a temper tantrum when I don't get what I want and think that God is unfair, unjust, and like, I did 90% of it right. And I lose all this because of the 10%. Like you're taking everything I've worked so hard for away from me because I didn't get it perfect. It's like, no, that's not what's happening right now. It's just what's happening right now
Yeah.
because we have free will and there's other people that aren't living in alignment with this, nor should I be the center of anyone else's universe, because that means that person's living out of alignment with what's best for them. Because I think every individual living out of a spiritual solution in their life with a relationship with a higher power to get their self importance in the right size would then act in accordance with the things that we all say we want to have and feel in this life. And so if I'm someone center of their universe, they're out of alignment. And if the higher power is not the center of mine, I'm out of alignment. So when things don't go right, it's usually because things are just out of alignment. It's not because it's personal. So I don't
Well,
want to lose.
a big part of it is the attitude of deserve.
Yeah. Well, that's also that's the tough one.
Well, but
That's
that's buried inside of what you were just talking about.
You're
You
right.
know, you're like if I'm doing 9 out of 10 things and this still happens to me, you have the expectation of I deserve this because of doing that.
And that's the tone I was coming at it with, because that's the mentality that leads to such
Mhm.
disappointment.
Yeah,
And you're
but
right.
it's
And it
something, like even in my amends, having some conversations with my sponsor and saying, well, I feel like that person might deserve an explanation from me. And he's like, deserves. He's like, now they deserve that. Why? Why are you pulling the strings and deciding what somebody needs in their life?
that's when stuff gets that's when the real deal starts coming, man.
But that
When you
is the
start
deal.
being when you start being guided into things on that level, you know that you are leveling up, because that's a wild concept.
Yeah. It was for me, it was like, whoa, I didn't
Yeah.
even realize I'm trying to control by trying to give someone what I felt like they deserved. You know, like just
Sure.
what I thought was an act of kindness was an act of control, and that blew my mind.
That's pretty wild.
But yeah, I was like, whoa. I'm like, man, I better second guess everything I'm doing right now because I sure have a lot of deserves in my life. You
Gosh.
deserve for me to be nice. That's
Yeah.
the pull and the string.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And I think that's when honestly, like if you really get down to it, like you have to surrender a lot, and a lot of people don't want to, and I'm one of them.
Mhm.
I thought, like they say, kicking and screaming. When I was a kid, my mom, I liked to sing, and I had been in the choir because I thought it was cool, and I wasn't self conscious yet. When I was really little, I wasn't self conscious yet. Kids just like dance in front of everyone, or they
Yeah.
like they're not self conscious. And then by grade 6, I was like started to get self conscious because like girls and friends, and I was like I'm not gonna sing in the choir. Like I'm done with that. Like that's not cool. And my mom was like, "Yes, you are," and she like literally dragged me, and I was like crying. She dragged me to sign up for choir, kicking and screaming, and like, but I love to sing, and I actually really wanted to. I didn't want people to think I was like not
Not
cool,
cool.
you know? And so it
Ah, I
still
bet you had the
happens.
voice of an angel back then.
Say again.
I say, I bet you had the voice of an angel back then.
I don't know. Um, but
She
that's a
wouldn't have
really,
taken you if you sucked too bad.
yeah. Well,
A
like
voice
they
only
didn't
a
like it.
mother could love.
Maybe to this day. But anyway, that's a cool. So yeah, it's tough sometimes. I I've seen the result. I'll finish my thought on it. I've really seen some great results of taking action in faith, knowing you're terrified or not knowing what the result would be like, and being happy I did so rather than like avoid. And so that's sort of like the main thing that I want to keep in the focal point.
Nice. Well, I
Mhm.
love that. I love you, brother. Okay, I got a
Yeah, me
question
too.
for you here. A spiritual awakening is just that, an awakening. We still have to get out of bed. Some people awaken for just a moment, then doze off again. If we want to stay awake and alive, if we want the miracle of recovery to continue to unfold in our lives, we find ways to put this awakening into action. If we're not carrying the message, we go to sleep again. How is service part of your program?
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, the waking and dozing off again. Yeah, going falling back into self and fear and self will. Uh, that's essentially what's going on and what I think you just described. So yeah, I often reference that first year. It was a brilliant, brilliant time. I do equate it to surrender that had never happened before, and the results of simplifying my life and doing things that inevitably kept me out of like the trouble I was getting into before that. I felt like I was given a chance to like I don't know, yeah, try again. And so that was the result of someone helping me, and that blew my mind. It restored my faith in people. Like
Mhm.
when that gentleman took me through the process he went through, which began to work for me, I was just like shocked, man. I was like, I can't believe this. And I always talk about the wrestle I had in the 3 to 4 month mark where I was like pushing back and like I was doing what I was told, but like I hadn't really fully given in, and like the resistance was getting in the way, and then like the beauty that came after was pretty neat. I mean, dude, I was shocked. I'm still sort of like I'm going through a little pocket of life right now where I'm like, like that was so cool. Like I never want to think that the best is behind me. That's a terrible place to live out of. But So falling back into fear, believing that I don't have the resources I need, or that like the things that I need are like too far out of reach to get to where I actually want to. And I want to be there now. Like, man, I suffer from that a bit, like I want to be there now. Like I'm not really in the mood to do that for 4 years to then be able to do what I want to do now. And
Yeah.
like I thought that what I did already should have already gotten me there now. Now you're telling me now isn't now. And it's like I just like I struggle with that, and I doze off into a little lullaby of this isn't why is my life going this way?
Mm.
And so the other day I had a moment with this HP and the spirituality. I was in fear, and it was like this little kind of knowledge came into my awareness, and it's like, how many times has this happened to you? It's like so many times. And you always find your way. Yes, I do. So why is it not going to work now? I don't know. It feels bigger and scarier. And this isn't like, oh, it rained and I want to go play golf. It's like, this is like, I'm like, this is not okay. And like, but this little sort of like intuition came through. It's like, why would it stop working now? And I just,
Yeah.
in that moment, I was like, fine. I was like, almost like a parent, like I was like, fine, like fine, I'll try to believe in this. I'll try to have a damn
Hmm.
faith. I'll try to move forward in faith. And like what I'm doing currently to navigate my current challenges, it's outside of what I previously considered like
Hmm.
my security. So we have these instincts, right? These social instincts. So like my sexual instinct, my social instinct, my financial instinct, all these different things were in a far better situation like a few months ago, and they just got like dusted, blown out of the water, like direct hit, homing missile. And I'm just like, whoa. I'm like, what did I do to deserve this? And like,
Deserve.
yeah. And so, unfortunately, it involves more than one person, and I can only control myself. And so, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm taking action in faith, but like, this is kind of lame. Like, this isn't really that colorful. But the fact is, day by day, I'm walking it out. And it's
Mhm.
the same as before. I'll quickly interject. 6 months sober, it was my first like tragedy in sobriety. I locked my keys in my house, and it cost me like $700 to get the key back or the lock fixed because it was New Year's and it was like double time plus everything, and it was like a really expensive locking unit. And I went to see my sponsor, and I was like all strung out. I'm like, I'm working hard. I'm trying to save money. And like, I literally locked my key in the house. I was on my way to work, and it cost me so much money. He's like, did you drink today? And I was like, no. And he's just like, then it's a good day. And I was like,
Yeah.
I just like, because it's a shift in perspective. Like to me, that was like a huge failure. Like, like I dumped it on heavy. And so
Hmm.
I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but that's another example where it's easy to look at what's gone wrong and not look at what's going well. And like, I'm really trying to nuzzle into that right now because there is a pretty slick layer of fear right now in my current circumstances because it's shifted me so far out of what I called my life prior to
Mm.
recently.
Nice.
So yeah, so I was kind of sharing some stories about where I fell back asleep during a process where maybe I was awake, but it felt like I was, back in the haze of like the mistakes or the things that aren't going perfectly. And then you talked about service in there, and I mentioned what the process of having been helped. And they say to get out of oneself to extend your hand to a fellow, and that can't really be like that's an incredibly important part of this whole thing. When I first, so I was in Toronto and moved to BC, and we had gotten to like 11, and basically like amends, talking about the daily inventory, and then like a book was handed, like an Emmett Fox book. Uh, and he was like, "This is a great book," and he knew I was moving away. He even said, like, "This is a pretty big decision to make in your first year and all this stuff." And then he said, "And when you get there, get a sponsee." And I was like, "Yeah, right." I was like, "No way." I was like, because I'm just like shy of a year. I'm like, that's insane. Maybe in a few years, like this. And he was dead serious about it. And I was like, really scared. I was like, who am I to take anybody through this at this point, And that was my perspective. And I remember being at another meeting consistently when I arrived in BC, and this other older gentleman, I was like, how do you go about this? And he's like, let it happen organically. He's like, if they ask if anyone's willing to help, like put your hand up or whatever. And I started sharing at meetings and whatnot. And like, sure enough, a few guys walk up and, I really like what you had to say. Do you think you could be my sponsor, whatever this is? Anyway, that's all it took. And then I got one. And then from then on, it was like, of course, I now know that it is possible. And it is something that I had absorbed it enough to know that it could be given back. And that's all I needed to know. But again, self fear, self doubt. Can I do this? And it was the most beautiful thing to get out of self and then realize that this message is beyond me and beyond them. And it's been extended through hundreds of people, one little torch at a time, one step at a time. And that it's not about me. And it does wake you out of a slumber once again. It's like, so what, the message ends, so the vine dies at you? It's like, no, man, the fruit has to be at the keep passing it along. And I think I shared this one other time. It can be told very quickly. Like, I listened to a speaker tape once, and this guy said many people get the solution and go back out, and they may stay sober or clean for the remainder of their lives. But when the next person comes in, there's no one there to share the message with. And I immediately said, like, how self-centered would it be to not keep going to these things in order to maybe potentially pass it on? And like, that was an awakening. That's an awakening. All these little things are awakening. So you don't necessarily have like a struck by lightning moment, as they say. Some people do. If you look at the spiritual experience in the back of the book, it tells it's a deep, deep change in one's attitude and perspective. It's not like all of a sudden you have tranquility forever.
Yeah.
Like, I see so
It's
clearly
not even
now.
calling it a solution. It's calling it a change.
Yeah, a change in attitude. And
Mm.
that's what I think we get, brother. Like, I think we get a complete different change in attitude of what it means to be useful. That's another incredibly important word. They say, how can I be useful to someone else? That's what they say. And it's like, when I'm full of fear and inside myself and wondering why my life's going the way it is, I'm not useful. And if I'm only going to be useful when things are going well, that's also not useful.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I be of service or useful in all seasons, under all conditions, and in all weather? And last year was a prime example when I was going through probably one of the more challenging things I hope that I ever go through. I was still present and completely able to pass on the solution, maybe not like perfectly, but I was able to show up and hopefully pass on something about the solution, even though I was literally, again, I'll use the word, being blown into dust.
Dust blown,
So
Bryant.
it transcends your personal issues.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah,
Is that the end of your response?
I'm gonna stop there.
Okay. Um, you know, well before I came into the program, I saw the value of service.
Yeah.
And about 4 or 5 years before I came in the program, I had the opportunity to meet Rick Hansen. And it was a real life-changing thing for me to
Okay.
see this person who had wheeled around the world to raise spinal awareness and accessibility, and like a man crying on stage who said if he could have his legs back but all the help he's done would go away, he wouldn't make that trade. And to see the honesty in his eyes when he said that, like, man, you'll meet very few people who would ever sacrifice that kind of part of their life for others. And so I realized the value of service in just how it made my heart feel to be
No
of
question.
service to people. And but now coming into the program, seeing that, the value of service as a method to not be thinking about yourself.
It's
Like
important.
the value of service as a removal from self-centered problems. Like
Yeah.
the surest way I'm not thinking about me is when I'm in my moments with my sponsees and we're really deep into some time with the steps,
Yeah.
and like I was fortunate enough at one point last year to be really overloaded with that. But it was
Yeah.
like, 5 days a week, I was on an adventure in someone else's life, trying to help it as best I could and trying to share what I learned about the steps. And, you know, um, I tutored people from grade 5 to third year university in math. And
Did you?
I thought I was going to be a teacher at one point, but one of the
It's
things I
amazing.
learned was that the only way you can teach a topic is to understand it well enough, not to think it, but to actually verbalize it. Like there's a big difference between understanding a principle and being able to verbalize your understanding about it.
Yeah, they
And
call that unconscious competence.
there we go. He's got the terminology. And for me though, I realized that when I had to start doing this with math. And
That's amazing,
but
though.
but I've always, and so I've shown a lot of people musical things. A lot of people got drawings of me teaching them notes and scales and things
Cool.
like that. But all that did was enhance my capacity to understand music and to understand math. And then now coming into the program, you know, I have so many aha moments when I'm trying to tell somebody else about what I'm trying to understand. Because sometimes
Yes. Yes.
the second a sentence comes out of my mouth, and I'm like, no, like something in just the pattern of words I thought doesn't make sense when I say it out loud, and I'm like, oh, whoa, jump back a bit, and then quite often that will lead to a conversation for us, which will cause another awakening, probably in me and my sponsee.
Yeah.
Like, that we both get to go on this exploration. And, for that moment with the sponsee, they're not feeling like they're being taught. They're getting probed and asked questions about what they think. And um, I think that
That's a good point.
people want to participate in their education versus being told what they need to learn.
I
And
couldn't agree more. And it's almost like you're immediately saying there's a lot of value in what you know already, but there's new things to learn. Like you're
and it's
inviting
just
them
like, I
to
never
bring.
thought of it like this. What do you think
Yeah.
about it? You're
Yeah.
validating their consciousness by asking their
Correct.
opinion, you know?
Yeah.
And so, for me, I feel like, my entire experience at options was an awakening. And then I left there on a pretty high pink cloud. And then I struggled right away to get a sponsor. And, it brought, I maintained my program, but I didn't feel growth. And then I
Okay.
got my sponsor and I felt some growth, but it didn't really work out with that sponsor. Then for a couple months, I was like struggling to sponsor myself because I couldn't find somebody else. And then finally, I found my new sponsor. And since then, I feel like, it's been a pretty steady progression for me because of working with him, but then also because of being inspired to take on sponsees by him. Like
Cool.
he started sponsoring people 2.5 months into his program.
That's
Why?
wild.
Because in the book it says, the best way to like the best chance for immunity from alcoholism is working with another addict. So he was like so worried about drinking again. He said, "Well, if that's the best way, then I have to work with someone right away."
Sure.
And I thought that was amazing. Like
Cool.
he just took all the people saying, wait a year and blah, blah, blah. And was like, no, he says in the book here, you work with people once you've had a spiritual awakening. I've had an awakening. Let's go. And he just
Fair
made sure
enough.
that he was ahead of them the whole time through, going on. But
Fair enough.
so, you know, I try to push myself all the time from, like even even just researching this topic today was like part of me like delving into the literature to see where it took me. And and that's one of the things that that I love this podcast for, is that it keeps me active in my research and my knowledge building of the program itself. And that I have the privilege of so many people like yourself with so many years more than me to bounce ideas off of, and back and forth.
Yeah.
So, like for me, this is service. Showing up 50 minutes early last night and setting the chairs up by myself is
Yeah.
service,
Yeah. It
sitting and
is.
talking to somebody newer than me in the program and having a great time with them, that's part of my service. you know Going to a friend's place who's struggling, part of my service.
Totally.
And even just having that support network of friends like we do is service. You're
It
being of
really is.
service. You're being of service to people you love. Like, service starts at home. It might be
I'm
driving your
glad you said
parents
that.
to it might be driving your parents to a medical appointment,
I'm
or
glad you said that.
just
Yeah.
talking to a lonely family member. It doesn't have to have anything to do with addiction. Service is a posture of the heart. It's what
I'm
they
glad
say
you
in the
said that.
living thing.
I was just about to add, they say in all of our affairs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is to be like some white knight in the program, and you haven't shoveled your snow and your family members are falling down in the ice on your own step. That's not right.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. Like, okay, it's time for a question from BW.
Okay. Let me check over here. Okay. Here's a good one. Well, I
Woo, I
shouldn't
like good
just
ones.
I shouldn't assume it's good.
I know, you know when they're good.
Well, I was gonna say, how did you come to believe in a power greater than yourself?
Okay. So I've said it on different versions of this podcast, but I'll say it again. So
Okay.
when I was 20, I started playing music.
Yeah.
And that very first day, I made up a song on my guitar. It was just like, creativity has been um, a gift in my life. And, I never have taken credit for all the songs being from inside me. They're just
Yeah.
not about my life all the time.
Yeah.
And and they're just not like, I don't even like some of them. I don't even like, like, it's not even like my style, some of them. They're just
Sure.
like, I'm like this radio and they just come to me. And so um I was pretty anti-religious God after my childhood. I was an altar boy, kicked out altar boy from my robe catching on fire. It did not end well with me in the Catholic Church.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, like it was not good. It was
I don't mean that's awesome, but like
yeah.
the robe is really
I was
awesome.
like, I'm putting this fire out on my chest, and the priest comes walking in, and he's like, "You get out of here!" And I turned to him
Really?
and I said, "Nice show of forgiveness, Father. You did Jesus proud." And I walked out the door.
My glory.
I was such a little jerk. Um,
That's awesome.
so I've always believed in this kind of universal energy, though. Like, um, if there's been like three people in my life where if I think of them like randomly, I'll get a call from them within 15 seconds.
Yes.
My mom being one of them. And so there's some kind of energy connection. And I really believe in, that what you focus on becomes greater, of like positive energies and negative energies, and how really, like, you manifest your life through your perception, but also through your projections. And so for my songs, I'm tying it back to the songs, it was like, thought, I'm a conduit. I'm not the creator of these songs. I'm a conduit that's getting sent these songs from somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And when I close my eyes, it's kind of like this golden nebula kind of residing somewhere in outer space. And it's just like beaming me like these songs.
Yeah.
And it's just like coming through me, you know, like there's times where I'm like writing and I'm like so excited by what I'm discovering, not by what I'm creating, but by what I'm discovering. Like it was always there kind of thing.
Right.
And so when I went into options, before I even got to options, there was a girl, lady, not a girl, lady I met at the conference where I had my kind of event where I died. And
Yeah.
she revealed to me afterwards, because she actually saw me getting taken out in the stretcher to the ambulance. She was the
Yeah.
only person, which was great for my reputation, but um she revealed that she had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for a while. And
Oh,
so
smart.
she was talking to me about this in the time period before I got into options. And I was telling her though, like, you know, I said, I'm all fine and dandy with anything that'll help me except for, you know, the God word. And she said,
Fair.
well, okay, you know, like I can get that. And she's like, that's probably going to change, you know, but if you're really going to try this, she's like, but there's a book called, you know, like the 12 steps, you know, without God or whatever. Right. And so I ordered this off Amazon. I had it before I came to options even. And
Really?
yeah. And, but when I got to options, it was like some real magical things just started happening right away.
No question.
You
Yeah.
know, like I just felt I felt really like I was in the right place, and I felt really like I was getting shown some really great examples of people doing super well in their recovery. Like when I showed up, 6 out of the 7 other people had been there like 4 to 6 weeks longer than me. So they were
Okay.
way advanced in their stuff. And you know, and the only person who showed up at the same time as me was Jordan. And so it was I got there on a Friday and it was the Monday, and there was a conversation about faith, like whether it was the daily reflections or the JFT. And so I was like the last person in the circle. And so, you know, one of the people that was in there, I won't say his name because, you know, I don't know if he's involved enough. Anyway, though, he's a very religious person. And so he was talking about his faith. And the one thing that, like, you know, even inside myself, judging, you know, I was like, oh, well, like, you know, I don't believe in what he's saying, but I was looking at him and I was like, look at the relief in his face because of his faith. Like
Sure.
him believing it was providing him with an inner peace about it that I didn't have,
Right.
you know? And and I was like, wow, it would be so nice to be faithful like that. You know, like it would be so soothing. And then
Yeah.
there was another person, and whatever they said, just it wasn't, you know, it wasn't part of what kind of transformed me. And then the next person was young Gabriel, and young Gabriel was talking about his faith, and he was, you know, talking about, you know, how he had kind of, you know, come to believe in the program and how it was really changing for him. And that, and while he was talking, I realized that I had for my music this universal energy.
Yeah.
It was all loving. It was like an infinite source that like shared with me that the only time I ever had writer's block, like the only time that I wasn't connected with it was when at one point I was trying to write a specific genre for this band. So I wasn't just accepting the creations, I was trying to control them, like self will versus
No
God's
doubt.
will. So I was like not living in the surrender of it coming to me. And that was the only time that that flow stopped. And then at that
Interesting.
moment, dude, tears started pouring down my face. And it was like I realized I could have a higher power to write a song and not to save my own life. Like it showed me how valueless I had become with my own existence.
Wow.
And it was like, and so it's not even my turn in the group. And I'm like bawling. Like
Yeah.
Susie and Shirley are sitting beside me. They're looking at me like, what the fuck is going on with this guy? You know? And
But it's
everybody's kind of
good.
looking because it's still like three people from me, and I'm like, and I'm trying to hold it in. I was kind of like trying to hold it in because I was embarrassed,
Sure.
like, Oshawa boys didn't cry. Oshawa boys didn't
Sure.
cry, dude. It was still a hard thing to get through and to cope with. So, that to me was um the exact turning point for me to having a higher power or not, because I just realized that I already had one. And so it's still some version of that same thing, except
Well,
I
yeah.
allow it to be for my life and for songs.
Well, yeah, that's an amazing way to tap into something that's already been supporting you in your life.
Yeah. And as you know, like I got no problem with songs. So like I've got no lack of faith in that higher power.
No question. And like, it either is or it isn't, like they say, you know?
Yeah.
And if
And
it is, it's a big deal.
yeah, but so it still ties in with my struggles about the G word, because that word was never part of my songwriting thing either, too. Like that's also asking me to bend it to a concept of something that I have negative. So
That's very
it
interesting.
yeah. So, like it's something that someday I'll have comfort in, but at this point I still don't have comfort in that, you know,
In the word or in the HP?
in the word. The
Fair
HP
enough.
I'm down with. In
Perfect.
fact, I nicknamed him HP Awesome Sauce.
Bring it on. And
Yeah.
so I took from your share there that you had been tapping into something profound for a long time in a creative way, and through a few other people's shares, and I always think of readiness, like um in that specific moment you were able to connect and realize that you had sort of disowned yourself or rejected yourself on some level, caring for yourself, but you had been utilizing this resource that had been helping you, um, in this wonderful part of your life. That for everything you've shared with me, this music has been very consistent and it's been a really important part of your life. And so it sounds to me like you were ready in that moment, in that specific moment, to recognize that maybe that could also be the same resource that could help you stay clean and return to sanity and have a very like hopeful life going forward. Is that right?
Yeah. And like I think as well, it was like I think by that point I had had my surrender, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Admitted I
believe
was
that.
powerless. And what I felt like was happening was that it was like my first glimmer of kind of the honesty and humility to be seeing things as they were,
Ooh,
you know? Like
that's
I
amazing.
just don't I just think that I pretended I loved myself for a lot
No
of
question,
years.
man. No
Yeah.
question.
Mm,
So did I.
yeah. And it's really like, no, I'm treating myself like shit. I'm ignoring signs that I'm killing myself. I'm demoralizing myself on every front, so I have no scrap of self-respect left. Where is their love?
Completely, man. And that's where that gentleness and compassion for self comes in, because like that's where the whole thing comes unraveled. It's like, where does the self begin and where does the higher power end? And is it
Yeah.
all that or is it all me? Because if you break it down, like we've been living in contradiction to everything we actually were suggesting we
Yeah.
wanted to be. It's so
Yeah,
cool. So
exactly.
yeah, and I can relate to that a lot. Should I share on that?
I want you to. Well, unless you want to just hold back and like chintz the audience and everyone start crying.
The old audience chins. So the I say I don't care what anyone or how it sounds. I just have to say, like, I have faith in this more than I ever thought I would, and I can't wait to have more. I can't wait to have more. Like, I hope if I'm granted a long life, that by the end I can see the beauty in all the tragedy, and I just really hope that I can see the value in all the little nooks and crannies that we are blind to in our previous vision of what, what this life is, what's going on in this life. And so I was shown, I think there was very good intentions. I think that my mother had tapped into a resource that was beneficial to her. It was a very aggressive version of Christianity. And it was then projected onto us at a time where like we hadn't even begun living yet. Like we didn't even know, there was just, it was completely out of alignment with what a child could ever understand at that time, which was just like you said. It's like, well, then I'm going to hell. Like by 13 I was hellbound.
Yeah.
And some of it was stuff that I had these urges and things and like instincts and things that like I had no idea what was going on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had things happen to me when I was before the age of 5 that were like things that changed my perspective on things. I was a child.
Yeah.
And so by a
And you're going to
teenager,
hell. You were going to hell because of your instincts.
yeah, and I had like made mistakes and I was creating shame and different things. Like, so yeah, by like early teens, mid teens, I'm going to hell. And I hadn't even started yet. And so I don't want to ever, I should have left her anonymous, but my mom, good intentions, created a very unhealthy, like very fearful, sort of like experience of God in my life. And however, right before I went to that treatment center when I was 20, I had accompanied her at her church because she like knew I was something, like she knew I was not doing well. She's like, just come with me. And like, I don't know why, I don't know how. The same way that moment your heart opened and the key unlocked that little thing, you heard what you needed to hear, the eyes started watering, your heart opened, and you were teachable, and or like there was access to you in a way that previously hadn't. I don't know why, but that day I had a spiritual experience that I think is the reason I stayed alive from then till the day I began sobriety. I was met with like an incredible complete acceptance of myself. I was absorbed into this warmth, like nothing specific happened. Somebody said something to me that just like dismantled me. Like this person spoke to me about my life. They had never met me before. I don't know how or why it happened. I'll never know. But I was met with a loving embrace from within of what I would call God or a higher power. There was no me in it. It was just this loving, full encompassing, warm feeling of pure acceptance. I felt loved for the first time in my life. Like, and it stuck with me for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then I was years and years and years of struggling with the wrestling the dragon. And
Yep.
then I've had little pockets of it in sobriety where I feel that same warmth. It's like a quick little hug. And it usually happens in a meeting or when I'm interacting with someone on a deep level and I realize that connection's there. And like the truth is real and there's an availability to this resource that is basically always there. And like we always talk about our heart, my heart's broken, or like
Mm.
it fills my heart. It's like whatever we call our heart, that's where that thing lives, and it's there, and it I think it's constantly guiding us, if we're open to it, to a higher level of existence. That's how I feel about it. And so how did I come to believe? That moment saved my life, and then all the experiences I had living in sobriety incrementally through watching others, supporting others, being supported by others. I genuinely believe now, even when the storm is fully in swing, that it's there and it's functioning. They do a wonderful reading here in Ontario, not all meetings, but at some, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And they talk about like that today's the only real day and the sun will rise, whether behind clouds or not. It will always rise, and it always does. And like it's there. It's there if you can or cannot see it. It's there. And so how did I come to believe? I would love to say now that I know, but I came to believe that way, and now I know. And then it's my job to tap into that and utilize that resource and try to ask to understand what that resource's will is for my life. Because when I'm not plugged in, I'm still very vulnerable, very vulnerable.
I love that.
Yeah,
Now, that was your question, right?
correct, my friend.
Okay. Okay. So, being spiritually awake, we can see the miracles that surround us, even when life is difficult. Generosity of spirit is the antidote for loneliness and alienation. Pain shared is pain lessened. Has this been your experience?
Can you just repeat that one part? Like pain shared is pain
Lessened,
lessened. So when you share pain,
like
it
lowering.
lessens the pain.
Yeah. Has this been your experience?
Yes. Yes. I have a reputation of sharing things sharing things with people, and I'm getting better. I mean, I went through a really good maturing there where, like, they call it discernment, like who you share things with and like appropriate timing, appropriate amount. I still think privacy is really wonderful, and but I do know when we open our hearts and we're vulnerable. That's why I think if I could tap into the beauty of meetings, yes, if you just go and don't do the steps, I think there's a high likelihood that you will miss that opportunity. But when I see the honesty, that's what I will say. That's other than community and friendship and um, what they call fellowship. That's what I get from meetings is the honesty. It's the
Hmm.
honesty. It's when I hear people being honest about what's actually going on in their lives,
Hmm.
it heals me because I know that I'm there, I care, and that they're there and that they care. And it also resets my brain in this. If I do this, and then this will happen. And once I get this, I'll finally feel like this. And then if I feel like this, then I'm gonna want to do that. And these people are gonna want to be with me because I'm feeling like this. And it's like, no, man, no, no, no. Like my best friend since I was a child passed away last week, and she was 40 years old, man.
Hmm.
Like, and the thing she told me several days before was that she was so disappointed because she was so content in her life. She actually had what she wanted. Like it was actually there. You know what I mean?
Or maybe she arrived, Ben.
She
Like
just
maybe she
I
transcended this world because she actually got there, man.
and that just blew me away because she said it so sincerely. She's like, almost in the sweetest way. She was like, she's like, this is so disappointing. Like I was so content with my life. Like I didn't want more. I didn't. I
Mm.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, because like I know a bunch of people that are running around constantly discontent. You know,
Shit talk in their life.
yeah, and like and blaming other people and blaming circumstances, and it's the boss, and it's my kids, and it's the snow, and it's like, man. Anyhow, so that's just a very and so yeah, that that changed me hearing her say that. That
Mm.
moment, that moment with my friend changed me, and
Yep.
I obviously was supposed to be there in that moment, like whatever that means. And being open when I share my truth with people, even if it's hard to hear, I find too, like whenever you go to people for if you share certain things with people, especially if you're suggesting that you're looking for a solution, um, you get that person's projection, you get that person's experience. A lot of the time it's open-minded and it has a lot of value, but I find in the last few years when I've talked to certain people at different times, they immediately go to the last time someone did that to them or like whatever that is. So I do think that healing can come from resources usually outside of that like immediate kind of maybe inner circle. You can hear these gems and these like amazing things where like healing can come from perspectives from other people that I think are invaluable. Um, so is that sort of in alignment with what you were asking?
I think so completely. You
Okay.
know, I find that, in my little self-centered brain I can make mountains out of molehills in
Yeah.
no time. And my pain can be the worst, or this can be an unsolvable problem. So I find when I do get to talk about things with people, you know, it really humanizes me instead of
Yes.
demonizes me, for my
Yeah.
actions, and also shows me that it's not so bad quite often, like
That's a very good point.
for sure that it's pain lessened. And then, you know, um, I think I have a real ability to put people on a pedestal, like, like to put myself lower and to see like people, like, oh,
That's
that person's got such a great life, or this is like, and so when I hear them share their pain, right,
yeah.
it makes me not feel so bad about mine,
That's a good point.
like, it humanizes them to me,
That's another very good
instead
point.
of idolizes them. And it brings us all to a more even playing field in existence, you
Man,
know
that's a that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
and I know that when I just keep that shit bottled up, I'm definitely lonelier, and
No
and
question.
and I'm definitely alienating myself and alienating you, because I could be sitting there thinking something and not saying it to you. And even if we're together, you don't know me,
Yeah.
you know? So I think that's my answer for that one.
That's a beautiful answer. I think, dude, and like that's the mechanism that kept us cut off from the vine, and that's the method that will keep you cut off from the vine, and that's the method that
Mhm.
people will keep you out of their lives with, is that superiority, that lack of transparency. Again, like you don't have to always spill your guts, but it I love that you sort of emphasize the common experience, and then like the awareness of other people's vulnerability. And if you are on the right track, you will nurture that rather than then use that as an opportunity to be superior to someone. It's like, oh, their life's not as great as it seemed, I feel way better about myself. It's like, no, it's like, oh, like this person, they've got some good things going for them, but like, man, I had no idea that that was going on. And I think it helps us unite and like put our guard down too. When you say,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
agree wholeheartedly on that.
yeah,
Okay, you got another question, B Dubs?
trying to think of which one to do.
I would say that I got time for this question and maybe one more.
No sweat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's very strange, and like I think we both suggested we do, so it might be like a bit of an odd timing question, but I think we could have some fun with it.
Okay.
Do you have confidence in your higher power?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like that's it kind of ties back to what I was saying that I said to my sponsor a couple months ago, and that I have more examples of
Yeah.
things that should make me entirely faithful.
Right.
And then I sit there and doubt sometimes.
Right.
So, you know, I think a big issue of it is that, there's some real struggles in my life. And at certain moments, instead of seeing them as my opportunities for lessons, I'm using them as um, scapegoats for unfaithfulness,
Okay.
you know, and it's hard. And it's
Yeah.
hard and I can see it as that, but I still can't transform that, you know? There's just some things where it's like, man, like I feel this almost like painful need for resolution, and
No
it's
question.
just
Yeah.
not coming. And
Oh, dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know, you know, and you know, it's like I'll just be happy when, and I know that that's not how life works. Happiness is now. And so for the most part, you know, I'm riding at a pretty good level. But when I'm
Nice.
really tired or in the midst of conflict or overstimulated by life,
Yes,
I can have my moments of weakness.
for
And I think
sure.
that's my answer for that one.
Perfect answer. It's so real, and I think my perspective is that that higher power knows that this is going to be an ongoing struggle for us. I think
Hmm.
uh I think from going from being completely self-reliant and wanting to like conquer and see how far we could, like the limit we could go with our self-will. And oh gosh, I think it's like a perfect design. It's like we were, it's like hide and go seek with the higher power. And were we hiding from the higher power, or was the higher power hiding from us? Like I think it could be seen from both ways. It's I think it's like a really interesting part of creation where the higher power temporarily hides while we seek, and then we seek ourselves looking for us, but then we end up finding it, and then it finds us where we are, and then we have this like ongoing thing where we get to know each other better, whatever that means. I trust it. I'm still working on not being so hard on myself when I'm clearly not, maybe like you said, like I've had all these experiences that suggest that thing is there and it's intact. It's like I really do need to still work on self-compassion when the faith is not, when I'm not perfectly convinced. And so I had something before. Um just give me half a sec.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I could like see your gears turning.
Yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, it was back to that little moment where it's like, do you have faith or not?
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I love the saying, don't base how you're doing on how you're feeling. And I think that
Hmm.
often we are actually doing quite well, but it doesn't feel that way, or the evidence isn't there. And they
Yeah.
literally say faith is taking action, not having like actual evidence of the result yet. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a lot of our lives, we base our interactions and transactions on like, send me the money first and then I'll show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Mhm.
Prove yourself to me, like a credit check. You know what I mean? Like we're credit checking the higher power, and it just is what it is, and it's really hard sometimes. And I think that that's, so I look at it like I've done some research and reading, and like there's a lot of stories of you know miracles and things happening, and it's usually when there is no evidence that there's a
Yeah.
solution, and like that's why they call it a miracle. So it seems to me that the spiritual solution usually comes when like it's not looking good, because it seems like we've both admitted on this podcast that like it required us being like basically at the end. I laughed really hard at the beginning because you said you were like, when you were describing how you felt and how you were when Shirley said like this is where you find a spiritual awakening and a spiritual solution, and you were like, yeah, right, like
I'm fucked. Yeah.
yeah, that's what you said. So anyway, that's a good laugh, and that's exactly how I think it works. Like when it's the last thing you want to do, you should probably do it, and when the evidence is not there is when you might get the best results. And like I don't know, man, they talk about paradoxes a lot, and I do believe that there's a very strange thing happening, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I really liked your answer there, Brian.
Thank you.
And I am really glad that we got together today on this
Yeah.
topic. It's been a wonderful journey. Any summarization you'd like before we say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I I'm always amazed at um the well of experience, and I think what it goes without saying that we're both, and I think people in general that have found this solution, very, very excited about it. We do practice humility, but it's okay to get excited about things that are, we didn't have access to this before. Like, we didn't have access to this before. And who knows where we're at in the spectrum of things that we can learn. But all I know is we were literally screwed. And now we have a hope and a chance. And it seems like we're very grateful for the things we're learning. Like, it's different than when you memorize or learn. Like, I've done a lot of things, I've learned a lot of things for work and school, and if there's so much value in that, but when it changes your attitude towards life and other people, and you get a sense of relief from this discomfort that used to literally control you, we were actually out of control, trying to control everything. That's why I laughed hard at the very beginning when you shared that you thought you were spiritual and that you thought you were enlightened. And I say it with love. I say it with love because I love that, because it goes to show that how much opportunity there is for growth, you know?
Yeah.
So what I
Sorry
would
about the
say is,
dog fest there.
no, that's okay. I can't even hear anything.
Oh,
What I would say is, to wrap things up and summarize, is thank you for sharing everything that you have with me, and thank you for allowing me to share what I have. I think the spiritual solution is basically inherent to getting well in this struggle in life. I think that it comes in a way that we never could have imagined, and I think that it usually comes through grace, timing, and the willingness to put down our guard, and unfortunately for addicts and alcoholics, and I'm sure it happens in many other areas of psychology, we had to be dismantled in order to be rebuilt. And I'm glad that somehow we're learning how to walk again in a different direction that I think is beneficial to ourselves and other people. That's all I really kind of feel towards this specific topic. I think it's very beautiful.
I'm really grateful for you. I'm really grateful for this topic. I'm really grateful for the solution that's kept us both alive. And I
Yeah.
just want to say to everybody out there, tune in next episode for more recovery fun. Bye bye, everybody. Please help us help others. If you've liked what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan, South Okanagan, Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.